is you're clean, unclean, tahor, you're clean. In other words, you have to have the remedy prescribed by the Torah in order to go into the tabernacle. It was all about this place. Why? Because this place was the presence of God on earth. Yes.
Didn't Yeshua teach his Talmudim that when he washed their feet, they were clean and they could go into the temple?
I don't think that his particular washing of the feet necessarily was in preparation for that per se. I'm not sure.
Why did he wash their feet?
To serve.
Yeah, because it was the action of one who would come in from off the streets, and a servant would do this. It was the action of a servant. Yeah, I don't know that I'm not sure I could connect it, yes, directly to the temple or going to the temple there. Maybe. That would be an interesting, I haven't looked at it in respect to that, but.
So in a sense, the woman came in and served Yeshua.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, very much so.
He associates with the Pharisee not cleaning his feet. The Pharisee not cleaning his feet.
Right.
So she's doing it for him.
Right. All right. Look at your notes. Did you look at this? You read this chapter today, chapter 23. Did you notice that there's an eclectic mix of all kinds of stuff? One of the features that we should take notice of from the past two Torah sections is that the Torah does not compartmentalize life into different segments as if there were no connection. The Hebraic mindset sees all of life as one continuous thread, not disparate pieces of some puzzle. For this reason, laws dealing with festivals can come right alongside those dealing with judicial instruction. Life is to be viewed holistically and not in fragmented parts. Today we hear people speak of their home life, or their work life, or their personal life, as opposed to their professional life. This disconnected view of life into various factions is in diametrical opposition to the view of the Torah. There's no such thing as, well, I have to act one way at home, but I have another set of ethics at work. You can't have two different weights. The Torah says you can't have two different weights. In other words, you can't say, well, I'm going to give my family a break. They can do whatever they want, but everybody else has to toe another line. I'll treat some people different than I do other people. I'll live differently at home than I do at work. Torah doesn't allow for that. It doesn't say you get to have a professional life and a home life that are morally and ethically different from each other. The second thing we should take notice of is that the whole chapter from Exodus 20, verse 22, all the way to the end of 23, is a contained section that expands on the 10 words. The 10 words should be thought of as larger headings, much like the chapters of a book. The sections of the Torah that we dealt with last week, and again with this week, are expansions filling out the specifics given to us in the 10 words. For instance, the first section of our Torah portion today expands on the number 9 of the 10. You shall not bear false witness. For any society to function to the best of its abilities, there must of necessity be justice in the courts. If the innocent are railroaded into bogus confessions, if the guilty are left free on a technicality, if the witnesses perjure themselves, and if the judges can be bought and sold, then justice becomes perverted. Due to the importance of justice within society, it should come as no surprise that the Torah spends a good deal of time addressing the judicial system so that both the rich and poor are treated equally. If judicial favoritism is granted to one based on economic status, then there can be no justice. Although, I must confess that our system has its problems in that area.
Only slightly.
Only slightly. Because if you're rich,
you
can hire your own lawyers. You can hire a team of lawyers who are generally some of the brightest and best. And if you're not rich, you get assigned somebody who has a caseload about this deep, who, because they're so overloaded and overwhelmed, wants to plea you out. They don't really want to defend you because, look, I got a caseload. Look, just take a plea. Okay? Let's be done with this. Serve a year, serve 2 years, and we can be done with this. So we'll plea bargain this, okay? Because I don't have time to go. I don't have time to give, multiple hours to your case because I got 50 other cases. I talked to these individuals. I talked to a judge just recently. He goes home at night. He tells me, and he has a stack of his caseload is just enormous. So there's no way that they can review everything in every detail. Yeah.
And I've had to deal with public defenders when I was a police officer, and they are not necessarily the brightest or cream of the crop. I have met some absolute.
Okay, I want to hold on. You may be somewhat right. I have another friend who is a public defender, and in fairness to them, they're overwhelmed.
And I can believe that, but also know for a fact some were.
Yeah, there are some though that are very bright. They went to some of the same law schools as their criminal counterparts, but they're in a system that is overloading them, so that they don't have time to review every detail of every case. They had to pass the bar. So they went to law school. So, all right. I like what was it? Milton Berle. I think it was Milton Berle said about never try to have your fate decided by 12 people who weren't smart enough to get out of jury duty. My wife, of blessed memory. She went to. How many of you gotten the summons before for jury duty? Okay, so she got summoned for jury duty, and hers was a criminal case, and the lawyers are allowed to have certain preemptories. They can dismiss without cause. Okay, and the judge can, from the bench, dismiss for cause or without cause. And it was interesting because there were I think there were 19-year-old girls that for some reason had gotten called to jury duty, and the defense lawyer said to one of the girls, he says, "I got to ask you a question." He says, "Do you think that if I, as a defense attorney, don't call my client to the stand, that means that they're guilty? Does that make them look guilty to you?" And she said, "Oh yeah. If you don't call your client to the stand, that makes them look really guilty." And he says, "You understand, our system doesn't require me to put my client on the stand. You understand that, right? And that there should be no innocence or guilt assigned to them testifying." And she was, "Oh, no, they look guilty if they don't testify." And he just looks at the judge, and the judge goes,
"Dismissed.
See you later, thank you." Yeah, you're out of here. Because you don't have to come up and testify. That's our system. All right. Anyway. Verse 2, middle paragraph there. Verse 2 of our text exhorts those who are witnesses not to be swayed by the majority or by peer pressure. Listen to this line. Here it is. Just because the majority is doing something or believes something does not make it righteous.
Amen.
Here is a fundamental Torah principle we must come to grips with. Doing what is right must be done even if it requires standing alone. The following of Torah mitzvot, commandments, are not something that should be done based on public opinion or the latest polling numbers because God commanded us to do it. We don't stick our finger in the wind to see what is politically correct, but we bury ourselves in the text of Torah. The only opinion that matters belongs to Almighty God, and since we have His commands, that is all we need. Bottom paragraph. Since the poor among us are the most likely to be mistreated within the judicial system, they are mentioned in verse 3. I'm going to skip down. Leviticus 19:15 reads, "You shall do no injustice in judgment. You shall not exalt the poor, nor shall you show favoritism to the great." Since the poor are potentially the most vulnerable and can easily be taken advantage of, their only recourse may be the judges. The Torah requires that all, no matter what economic condition, be treated the same. Verses 4 and 5 of our Torah text deal with someone who finds the animal of an enemy. In verse 4, we presume that the animal has wandered away from its owner and is incapable of finding its way back. Since this animal is probably necessary to the economic well-being of the owner, one has the Torah obligation of returning the animal to its rightful owner. The phrase, "you shall certainly return it," is a hifil infinitive absolute, followed by a hifil imperfect of the same verb. So, you shall certainly. This is done for emphasis and has the force of a command. Verse 5 envisions the scenario where the beast of burden has wandered away from its owner and is unable to rise from its burden. It's been wandering around for so long that it finally just kind of collapsed. Again, the animal belongs to your enemy, but both the animal and the owner need your help. You don't like this guy. Release him. Shoot them both. Releasing the animal from its burden and returning the animal to its owner are not optional but commanded. Here's a second fundamental Torah principle we must grasp. Doing right is not to be based on feelings, but on doing what is right. If life is governed by feelings, then it will be a roller coaster ride that never ends. It would have been easy for the man that found his enemy's animal in distress to just walk away and no one would have been the wiser. Obedience to Torah requires doing what is right when no one is looking. Torah, contrary to popular misconceptions, does ask us to regulate our internal compass and does not just deal with externals. Our feelings of like or dislike of someone cannot excuse us from helping him or her in time of need. I did not, quote, feel like it, will not cut it as an excuse with God. So what happens? See, our modern way of thinking is, I'm here, you've heard it before, finders, keepers, losers, keepers. That's not Torah. Yeah, that's not Torah. Torah says, if you find something and it has value and their name is in it, or you think this is something that belongs to somebody, this is probably lost because somebody would want this. Whoever lost this would want it, because I would want this if it were mine. For instance, you find a purse that's been abandoned. You say, well, the only thing to do is to rifle through it, take out the money, the credit cards, and then it's all yours. No. You find out who it belongs to, and you call the person up and you say, look, I found something that I believe belongs to you, and you return it to them. That's your obligation. You have a question, sorry.
Well, I was going back to the other one, on the animal, finding the animal of your enemy, and I'm curious is the Hebrew word there that's used for enemy, because in the same text he talks about, I'm going to drive all your enemies out from the land.
Well,
So
I think
who would your enemies be that would be there?
Oh, yeah, that's a great
That would
question. Look at
You want
Deuteronomy.
to find your enemy's animal, but I'm going to drive all your enemies away. Well, who are the enemies?
Okay, so go to Deuteronomy chapter 22.
I found a cell phone in the back of a taxi cab in London, and I just picked it up and dialed the last number that had been dialed, and I was like, hey, I'm in a taxi cab. Do you know anybody that just lost their phone? And the lady was with the friend, and they were so excited because they were from like Arizona or somewhere, and they'd lost their phone in London too. So we were able to do a half a block turnaround to the mall, and they met me outside, and it felt really good.
Baruch
You know?
Hashem.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome. Look at Deuteronomy chapter 22. Deuteronomy chapter 22. You shall not see your brother's ox or his sheep going astray, and hide yourself from them. You shall certainly bring them back to your brother. And if your brother is near to you, or if you do not know him, then you shall bring it to your own house, and it shall remain with you until your brother seeks it. Then you shall restore it to him.
So in our text in Exodus, is that,
It's an enemy of your own people.
but is the Hebrew word there for enemy, or is that just the crappy translation?
I believe it's. I'll check it out again. Hold on. Just to make sure. Could be a bad translation, but I think it's. I'll double check. Just a second here. I want to make sure. That's the word oye. Oye, which is a typical word for enemy. So, yeah, that's what I thought it was. So it's the idea of, but it's your brother. It's not the enemy you're driving out. It's the guy you don't like because Well,
Because
frankly,
your lawnmower and didn't bring
yeah,
it
he takes your bars and lawnmower, yeah. Or, you know, he's the kind of guy that he fills your trash can up with his trash. Or, you know, he just does things. He takes your newspaper, you know, your newspaper off your porch, and you know, he's a bad neighbor, not a nice guy. He's selfish. He lets his animals go run loose, and they get into your food. Now your job is to take the animal back to him. If you know it's his, don't take it out on the animal, and don't take it out on him. Come back to him and say, hey, you know what? Here's your animal. You know,
Again?
bring it back again. Yeah. You don't kill his animal and have a barbecue. And go, well, you know, life. You know, easy come, easy go. You know, no, it's the
Fix the fence and then hand him the bill.
right. Yes.
You know, that Torah instruction is all followed up by instruction in Proverbs with results or consequences. If you're in Proverbs 25:21, if your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. For you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. So by doing good for somebody who doesn't like you or you don't like, could change heart.
Yeah. The hope is that it changes their heart, and they go, you know what? I realize I've been selfish. I realize I've been unkind, and now that I see your kindness and your gentleness and your compassion, they make a change. That's the hope. Yes.
It also deals with the temptation to not get involved.
Yes.
Like if you, like for example, a long time ago there was a situation where a woman was getting attacked in New York City.
Yes.
Kitty Genovese was her name, and nobody called the 911 or anything. They just sort of thought everyone else would do it. We can't get involved, blah, blah, blah. And so it deals with that. You have to become involved. You
Yes.
can't just assume somebody else is
Right. If another person is actively being attacked or hurt,
Yeah.
you have the obligation, Torah obligation, to the extent that you can, to become involved to relieve their pain. And notice you have the obligation towards animals.
Yeah.
So you can't just hide your eyes. You can't turn around and go, you can't say, well, I didn't see that. Or finders, keepers, losers, weepers. Because here again, the principle is, if you had lost this, you'd want it returned. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Basic principle. If you lost your purse, you'd say, man, I had a lot of my ID in it. I had my checkbook, my driver's license, a lot of stuff in there. I'd like that returned. So if you find one, return it. Because that's what you want done for you. You can't turn away from it either. You can't steal from it, nor can you just act like you didn't see it. In other words, Torah requires you be aware of your surroundings. You don't get to just turn a blind eye and say, well, I didn't see anything. All right. Go to the bottom of page 2. The next section of the Torah deals with the expansion of the fourth commandment of Exodus 20. Just as a man is to cease from all the work of the Shabbat, so too the fields of the Israelites shall lie fallow every 7th year. The land was not to be plowed, pruned, or planted, but just allowed to grow without intervention. This letting of the land rest would allow those who were needy, as well as cattle, to have the opportunity to gather food without gaining permission. Allowing the land to rest would allow the soil to be replenished, but more importantly, it would force landowners to show mercy to those truly in need. Further details of this command are given in Leviticus 25. Here again is a basic Torah principle. Every community must make sure that the basic need of food is provided for its members. God is compassionate towards those who have no food to sustain their life, and had built into the system a means by which those without food could sustain themselves. Now here's the other Torah commands. Number 1, the corners of the field were to be left for the poor, widow, and foreigners. But the text doesn't tell you how much of a corner you're supposed to leave. That's up to you. How much of a corner do you want to leave? You want to leave a little corner? You want to leave a big corner? Or a bigger corner? That's up to you. Doesn't say how much it is. And in fact, it's interesting, the rabbinic literature refuses to enter into this one. It says, look, we're leaving that one up to you. We're not going to tell you how much of a corner you have to leave. That's a tractate payoff. They just basically say, we don't want to get involved in this one. They do a minimum. They say there's a minimum of like a 2%. I gotta tell you though, my friend Gershon, now here's the spirit. Here's the spirit. I go to Gershon's winery in 30 miles south of Jerusalem. He went to he takes the corners of his field and he says to everybody in his area, I want you to come and take the grapes from the corner of my field. And so spiritually blinded and dense, in my estimation, they didn't believe him. Everybody looked at him like, what do you mean come get the corners of your field? Nobody does that. Nobody does that. We haven't done that in who knows how long. So nobody came. Because they thought well, really? Seriously? It's probably some kind of joke. Probably, maybe it's some kind of
sting operation.
So the next year what he does is he bottles up all the wine, bottles it, corks it, puts it in, and he goes out on the streets and he gives it away. And he said to me, I said, what did you do that for? He says, well, here's my theory. And listen to what he said. If they won't come to my corners, I'll take my corners to them.
That's right.
And I said, that's the spirit of Torah. That's the spirit of Torah. You have a question?
Could you give your whole field if you wanted to?
Could you give your whole field if you wanted to?
Yeah, like
Sure.
people come and do it all.
Sure. You could let anybody at any time come in your field and take whatever they wanted. If you're the owner of it.
There's such a field in Tacoma, a blueberry field, that they'll open the gates up and you can pick all you want.
Yes. Yeah, we have, now, so here's where halakha comes in, and we have it in the apostolic scriptures. Well, let me finish this section. We'll come back to that because you bring up an interesting thing. 2, the field was only to be harvested once. Anything dropped while harvesting, you have to leave it. Oh, now that requires that if you're going to follow Torah, you have to believe that God's looking. Because who else is going to see if you drop it? I mean, you drop it right at your feet. And the Torah says, you dropped it, you leave it. And the Torah says, number 4, if you're going down a hedgerow and you get to right here, you go, oh, I missed something right here. Leave it. Don't touch it. You got to leave that. But I missed it. It's a whole little cluster right there. I just didn't see it. Leave it. Leave the corner. Only go over it once. If you drop it, leave it. And if you pass by it, leave it. But this requires that you have some integrity of person, because you may be out there in the field all by yourself. Nobody knows. Who's going to see it if you reach back? Who's going to see it if you reach down and grab what you dropped? It's just right there at your feet. Now you've got a choice to make. What do I do? Now, one second. Coming back to those that had a question. We have this issue of, in this state, like other states, people, I see it all the time, they go out and they'll have their kids out there with them and families, and they'll have baskets, and they're taking berries off these vines that belong to public property. They're along the road or places where people come and let you pick. You pick, right? You come and, they're going to make jams or berries or pies and all this other stuff with all these different berries. You see them out there with baskets. They're harvesting. They're harvesting. And what's interesting is, written Torah did not deal with the issue of, did you have to tithe on things that you harvested from someone else? It was ownerless. Ownerless property. When you harvest ownerless property, do you have to tithe on it? It's not yours. You didn't plant it. You didn't harvest it. You're just going out there and it grows naturally. It just grows naturally. In fact, if you go out in this area right here, you can go out there and grab berries. You can just take berries. You'll see them out here. Blackberries. Blackberries. And they'll be like, put them in baskets. Now the question is, do you have to tithe on that? Well, the written Torah doesn't say anything. Doesn't address that. But here's what's interesting. During the intertestamental period, the rabbis are having discussions on, do you have to tithe on that which you harvest but you didn't plant? And it's interesting, they said, yes, you have to tithe on that which you harvest even if you didn't plant it. If you're harvesting it, if you're benefiting from it, you have to tithe on it. And it's interesting that Yeshua actually agrees with them. Yeah, the dill, the mint, and the cumin grew wild. So people harvested this stuff as it grew wild. And he says, you shouldn't neglect the weightier matters, but neither should you neglect tithing on this as well. He says you tithe the dill, the mint, and the cumin, and you neglect the weightier matters. You should do the weightier matters, but don't neglect that as well. So he's actually weighing in on this intertestamental decision with regards to halakha of things that grow wild. So some people say, well, Yeshua wasn't aware of his times. Oh no, he's very aware of his times. He's very aware of what everybody's saying around him. And he's weighing in. Very much so weighing in. All right. Any questions or comments on that? Yes.
Well, it's kind of interesting that the Torah approach to helping those in need. We have a welfare system that if you don't have it, just ask us, we give it to you, where in this case, you actually have to go out and, if you will, earn it by doing the work. In the case of Boaz and Ruth, not only does he not embarrass her by saying, here, he gives her a premium place to go pick and tells people, let her work for it, leave some, make sure she has enough to work to earn, to provide
and
for
in fact,
it.
he actually tells his guys to drop some.
Yeah.
So that she doesn't have to pull it. So he just says, look, when you guys harvest it, let's just don't bind it up in the regular stuff, just let it drop. Yeah, fasting, that which is built off of this as well. I want to, yeah, go ahead.
Was that the issue Yeshua was doing in the gospel when he was on a Sabbath day, he was doing something with the, I can't remember exactly what it was. He was in the fields with his disciples.
Yes, there is a situation where he's in the grain fields.
Yeah.
His disciples take grain in their hand and they husk it, and the Pharisees say, they've harvested.
They have unclean
Yeah, because
hands.
there was a debate amongst the Pharisees. How much could you do on a Shabbat? Were you allowed to harvest on a Shabbat? Now they're not harvesting clearly there for any kind of commerce. It was for personal.
Yeah.
So there was debates. This is a first century debate that's going on with regards to what you could do with regards to eating and how much you could do. Right. This is halakha that's being debated in the first century. 1, 2, 3. One.
Could you explain what halakha is?
Oh, halakha. Yeah. Well, we talked earlier about derek. Derek means road or way. And the word halak means to walk. Verbal form to walk. So within rabbinic literature, you have what's called halakha. How you walk. How one walks their life. And a particular ruling given by a rabbi or rabbis would be called their halakha. That is, this is the way you should walk. This is the direction you should go. So a halakhic ruling or halakha was, here is the path that one should walk in order to arrive at the correct place that you're supposed to be. All right, yes. And then Dan.
You talk about tithing the natural fruit, like the blackberry.
Yeah.
We pick blackberries. Does that mean that when we pick our blackberries,